Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Wandering Road podcast. I'm your host Chris, alongside my co-host Dean, and joining us for tonight's show for the second time are Shane and Alex from SAW Paranormal. Shane, Alex, glad to have you back on the show.
It's good to be back on. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. We had such a great conversation last time. There were quite a few things that, we wanted to talk about with last show, but we just ran out of time. So we decided to go with the part 2.
Yeah, which
For that interesting.
honestly though, it really was I think it went on for, I don't know if we talked after for longer than even what we thought, but it was like a really, really chill podcast. So yeah.
Yeah, we continued for an hour after that with we got into some divination tools and stuff, talking about that stuff. So
yeah.
Sorry listeners, that wasn't something that we could put on the show, but it was a fun time.
But we should get some really good conversation going now for this one, because we're going to talk about your guys' experience in the world of psychic medium work, and then also we'll dive into what I just found out is really interesting to me. If I heard past lives and reincarnation, I would totally have assumed it's the same thing, but I just learned from Alex that it's actually two different things, like polar opposites. So I'm actually really excited to dig into that and find out more about the contrast and maybe how it kind of ties into your experiences as a psychic medium. Maybe even talk about some other real world examples that you guys are aware of, because you probably know much more in depth about that aspect of life than we do. So we're really excited to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really funny too, because I don't know, a lot of times you think reincarnation and past lives, and when you don't dig deep, a lot of people do think they're the same thing, but actually they're very, very different, and they don't go hand in hand. Reincarnation really actually has to do more with religious belief and a cultural background that some people kind of, whether it's kind of like a thing if you believe in it or not, or if you grew up with that religion type of thing, that belief system. Whereas past lives, it's kind of a thing where everyone is known to have them. And past lives really have to do with things that you've experienced in other lifetimes that kind of lead into this lifetime. They kind of say all of our lifetimes mesh into one giant one. That's why if you ever hear people getting past life readings done, they'll be like, oh, you were a psychic in past life before, or you were doing this before, so now you're doing that again, or and you're kind of meant to fulfill things that you didn't finish in that past life.
That's so fascinating, because Chris and I, we just did a conversation. I can't remember which, or a podcast not long ago. We had a conversation with a guest, and I think we touched on the idea of the egg. Are you familiar with that? Have you ever heard of that?
The egg, you said?
No? Yeah, the egg. It's Chris, you know what I'm talking about, right? When we talked about, I think
the egg theory.
Yeah, the egg theory. The universe is essentially an amalgamation of. So, yeah, it's. I mean,
actually.
There's actually a fantastic YouTube short. So there's this channel called Kurzgesagt, and they do really intricate, well done, cartoony bits about real world problems and just information about scientific aspects and theoretical aspects. And one of them was called The Egg. So if you're interested in seeing that, just go to YouTube and try your best to spell Kurzgesagt and then throw in the egg after that. But it's not it's very well done. It's not hard to understand, but it's essentially, the idea is in the same vein as past lives, where everybody is connected and everybody is continuously going through these experiences. And then when you get to the other side of the veil, after you pass away, you go up and meet, the being that is helping the entire universe grow. But essentially at the end of the day, what's happening in the egg theory is that everybody's experiences are all interconnected. And once we all move on to the next life, that experience gets kind of added to the or the universal consciousness of experiences. And then the end result is that all of us kind of come together and become like this celestial God, like kind of like God level, not God, but like, yeah. So I don't know if that sounds familiar, but I always thought that idea was fascinating. It sounds like it's in the same vein as what you're talking about, but there might be some differences there.
Go
I
ahead.
don't know if that's the same as. I think I'm mixing two and two together, but I know there's one where like once you've lived every single lifetime that's ever happened, then you're finally born. I don't know if that's the same as the egg theory or if it's a different.
Oh, that's
theory.
really
Just
interesting.
mixing two into one.
Yeah.
But I've heard of that one too.
Which even both of those would be different from past lives, though I will say, like, how you were talking about, like, real world and things that are happening. It's kind of in the way how they say spiritual people, the more people that are enlightened, the more people are banding together and helping other people, so to speak, or the cleanup crew. Now, if you think about it, if you kind of go through life experiences that expand your consciousness and then you're seeing things from different perspectives, that can be spiritual enlightenment in a way. And then you're able to talk to people more like-minded, and then maybe the people you used to have in your life that are understanding those deeper meanings to life, you don't mesh with them as well as you used to.
Oh, that's cool. That makes sense.
So yeah, in a way, I could see how the egg theory is, because you see people, you see things like that happening all the time. But yeah, with past lives, it's a little bit different. It's really interesting, but even people like within your current life right now would be involved in your past life, but they might not be the same people or the same connections.
Is that kind of like the idea that, like, when you, like, let's say you have someone you love in this life, you link up with them and you're together with them lifelong, you go through life with them, and then when you both die and are reborn, those same spirits or souls like find each other again? Is it similar to that?
You definitely can. And a lot of times, even like how maybe with some of your exes or something, like when you met them, you're like, oh, I felt like I had met them before, or I'd know them longer or whatever. And it ends up being really tumultuous or what. A lot of times that's something that you experienced in a past life that you never really got through fully, and you almost needed to revisit it to kind of get through it fully and cycle through to allow new.
Yeah, you actually answered my question, but I was going to basically ask, like, what's the purpose of the past life experience? And it sounds like it's to progress as like a soul or a spirit. Like you said, you're sometimes going through the exact same situation over and over again. Like I'm sure everybody does in their regular life. Like we all make the same mistakes sometimes over and over again until we like grow and learn from it. I guess it makes sense that it's possible to have a spiritual or like a metaphysical side to that reality as well, or that idea.
Right. But like, even for example, I gave Shane, every once in a blue moon, he'll be like, okay, give me a reading. And the one time he asked for a past life reading, and I don't know, do you remember anything from it?
I remember that I was a straight badass from what you've told me.
Well,
lots of war. I think World War I you've mentioned specifically too.
Yeah, I wish
which is my top 3 favorite wars.
He's really into history. He's really like into that stuff, and like the connections I found.
It's a sick shirt.
I think we just discovered a past life connection between Chris and Shane. You guys both are history buffs.
Yeah, I got 2 degrees in history, one like focusing on classical history. Whatever. My shirt says Gaius Julius Caesar's World Tour, and it has every single battle that he went through in the Gallic War and in the Civil War after he crossed the Rubicon. And you know what? I'll piggyback off of that with asking this question, Alex. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can answer it, and maybe it's somewhat connected to past lives. Are people drawn to certain things based off of their past lives?
Definitely. 100%. 100%. Oddly enough, and this made sense to me. When I found the mentor that certified me, she was getting certified herself. And her test to be certified was being at a psychic fair. And I went to the psychic fair. I saw her and I saw another psychic. The psychic told me things about a past life. She was like, oh, you lived in Spain or Spanish in a past life. And Germany. Bavaria, Germany, to be exact. And I hadn't done an ancestry test until this year. Now, the Spanish, there's no Spanish in my exact DNA, but my cousin has it through my papa, the Spanish. And I do have the German. And I've actually done past life regressions now that make a lot of sense, and a lot of my cleansing things and with my ancestors that I work with now make sense to that reading that psychic gave me. But that was like years ago.
Like ever since I was little, that was like when the History Channel like first came out on cable. And when I was little, I would always watch Roman Empire shit. Like that was always my go-to. And my mom would always be like, oh my God, my kid's going to turn out to be this fucking psychopath murderer because all he does is watch like Roman Empire battles and stuff like that. And then come to find out, like we did our ancestry test, and I was always so fixated on like the 10th Legion, and the 10th Legion was from southern Spain. We do our ancestry test, like me and my mom, and our Spanish DNA is from exactly that region. I'm like,
no, yeah, and that exactly even lines up with our past lives. Our ancestors line up with our past lives, even because we've lived so many lifetimes you don't even realize. You'll notice, if you even just notice like things you're drawn to and then line it up with your ancestry, it's not just your ancestry that's calling you there, but it's also things to do with your past life. The things that I'm interested in definitely have to do with my past life. The psychic medium stuff for sure. I was told I was a fortune teller in a past life, or that I used to run a shop when I had a life in Germany. I like ran a shop with my husband and my dog, apparently, which I mean, like,
yeah, one of them, yeah, a dog.
Shane was the dog.
Yeah, Shane's the dog. Cooper's my husband. Who are we kidding here? No. But the shop, I mean, I hope to have that eventually, and I study herbalism and everything to help with my cleansings and everything. So the shop and my past life and everything like that, it all.
I'm sure you've heard the word like karmic lesson or something of that sort.
Oh yeah.
Is that why we have so many past lives? Like, okay, it's like you didn't learn your lesson in the first one, so we got to do it over again and do it over again. And we touched on this a few minutes ago, where it's like, is that like when you meet someone you feel like you've known them before, like their entire life? Like there's another podcaster that we work with frequently, JJ from the Southern Demonology podcast. Awesome dude. I've known him since probably October, and he sent me a message the other day. He's like, dude, it feels like I've known you my entire life. Like that's how quickly we've become close friends. And
you know, it's an interesting aspect too to that. I was going to add on to when Chris and I met in school, we were like, we got along pretty well, but dude, do you remember like when we were living in the dorm, I think you and I kind of avoided each other for a little while, because like we were both really quiet and we were kind of like unsure what the other was like. I don't know if you remember that, but we did hit it off eventually, but like not as much as we do like we have now. Like, so right. If you remember, like DJ, a guy named DJ was part of our group, and there was a couple other guys. I actually like got closer to DJ for a while, and we really like, you know, got along and resonated, but then we kind of fell by the wayside. Like we kind of went different directions. And then later on, like years later, after we both left the area, like graduated and moved on, and then I actually came back for grad school, that's when we started clicking, I think, right? Like a few years after graduation.
No,
or was it like right after?
It was still undergrad.
It was still undergrad when we started hanging out. Okay.
Yeah.
what I was trying to say was when we initially met, we did not get along as well as we did eventually. And I think like there might be a little bit more discussion to be had there about how past lives plays into that. Cause like there must be something to that, right? Like you come across somebody and you might not get along with them immediately, but then why is that? Like, how does that, what would you say, both of you, Alex and Shane, what would you say to an experience like that where you meet somebody, you don't really resonate or get along with them immediately, but then a couple years later, like they end up being the love of your life or your best friend or something like that?
You're meant to cross paths. It was meant to cross paths, basically. Because when Shane, it was really weird, like, we're gonna go there, but like,
go there, do it.
But, when we first met, like, I don't know, I wasn't really sure about him at all. Like, I didn't think our personalities would clash at all. He's chaotic and, like, he's super, super dry. And I'm a little bit more serious and, like, I'll joke with you once you get to know me type of thing. Yeah, it was weird because, like, we met on an investigation and, you know, I had psychics tell me I was going to meet somebody, like, very significantly and significant timing. And I did not even think it was him type of thing. Like, it kind of went by me for a few months, and then it kind of clicked after a minute, and I was like, huh, okay. So it's, yeah, and there's
never
even
know.
Yeah, literally.
That's an interesting concept, and it's funny how this came up because all of my really good friends, when I first met them, it was like, I don't fucking like you. and it's like, like, you fucking asshole, like, I don't like you. And then they turn out to be some of my best friends, like my buddy that I was just in his wedding as his best man in October. In my best man speech, I fucking flat out said, like, I didn't like him in the beginning. And then all of a sudden, like freaking 12 years later, here we are. And then the people, you're like, oh man, I really like them. It turned out to be complete dipshits. And it's like, I never understood it.
Yeah, literally. It's weird how, like, everybody in your life you run into for a specific reason, even if they're not meant to be there forever, whether it's friendships, relationships. Timing is everything. And as you were asking before, like, does that mean, like, you repeat lessons if you don't get it right? Let's say, like, you went through a really, really rough childhood and it's like, oh my god, why did somebody go through that at such a young age? And then you look at their past life, that those hardships might have been happening in their past life while they were older that led to their death. So then for them to finally get over that hump and finish that cycle, they had to go through it at a young age. And then that's why people are, oh, you're an old soul. You know, they had to mature quickly, but also they were finishing that.
Yeah, me too. Actually, when I was younger, you just reminded me of that. Like when I was younger, I tended to be someone who was like really reflective, like wallflowery. But then I would like ask adults, like, "Well, what about this like XY concept or this grand idea or like whatever?" And they're like, "Oh, I have no idea how to respond to that." And then someone told me once I was an old soul. But like, I wanted to ask another question in the same vein that Chris had, which is, how would you respond to the idea, like if you look at somebody like who is a world conqueror, like Chris was saying, like Julius Caesar or Genghis Khan, or even someone as terrible as like Hitler, like what would your analysis be about someone who is that level of experience, or like what, how would you say that you would understand their past lives if they rose to that level, good or bad?
Truthfully, I would say that one, this even could go into astrology charts and your birth chart, because placements within your chart have to do with a lot of significant things within your life. The stars can't lie. And I'm not good at reading birth charts or anything like that, but I know that takes a huge play. Also has to do with who you were in a past life. Now, whether you do good things or bad things, that could go into even energy wise, negative energy. There has to be, for balance in life, there has to be dark and there has to be light. And so if they had something in their past that was kind of leading up to those things, there could be multiple things that led up to that. For example, Shane and I were told that I had Cooper for a few lifetimes. I've been with you for a few lifetimes, and we were doing exorcisms and helping people for a few lifetimes, and we're meant to continue that in this lifetime.
I knew you guys were the Warrens.
Yeah, we were wearing a mask the whole time. We also faked our death. No?
Where's your gold?
I would say that, like, then someone like, Genghis Khan or Julius, someone that's, good or bad, they likely had the same things going on in their past life. If not, something leading up to it to get to that point.
I just had like an aha moment, which is I think it's just such a good sign that like everything you're saying is so spot on, because when you talked about the stars, the idea of like, that sort of thing playing along into someone's life. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but like even like as far back as like the ancient Chinese Empire, they had stuff like divinations and reading, even like I think it was like reading cracked like they would take fire and they would put it into a shell of a turtle and then it would crack a certain way and they would read that, but they were really tied to numerology and astrology and all that stuff. And
they were big with oracle bones too.
Oracle bones, yeah, that's where it all started,
in
right?
The Shang dynasty, that was a big thing for them.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't that really play a big part into who was emperor, like who came to power? Because it was kind of like heavenly divine will, like from the head, like the stars kind of like dictated who was going to be the next person or group or whatever to rise to power. So that kind of fits in the same narrative of what Alex was saying, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. There were like many different forms of divination that was used in antiquity. The example I like to use goes back to Julius Caesar's commentaries, which I've read like 20 times over. There's one battle where I think it might have been the Aedui tribe goes to the Romans and they're like, hey, Ariovistus and the Swabian Germans, they're kicking the shit out of us. They're taking our land, taking our women, they're taking our food, they're taking everything. And Caesar is like, okay, I will intercede on your behalf. So Caesar goes, tracks down Ariovistus. Ariovistus stalls Caesar for time because every morning Ariovistus would go to his priests or his druids or whatever, and they would do their sacrifices. And if the divination that they do with the entrails of whatever animal they sacrificed or whatever they did said, if you go into combat, you're going to lose today. And Julius Caesar, his priests said the same thing. Like, if you go into combat, you're going to win. So Ariovistus kept stalling for time. And Julius Caesar eventually pushed him into a battle and they smacked the ever-living shit out of him. If the oracles divine that if you go into combat and you don't listen, bad things are going to happen. And we talked about that with when we talked about oracles, Dean. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember. Yep.
Yeah, which we have slated for a future episode, folks. The example of, what's his name? The king of Lydia, Croesus. He went to the Oracle of Delphi and he asked, if I go into combat, am I going to win? And she gave the example, well, the analogy of like the empire that's led by a mule or something like that is going to lose. His dumbass thought that the empire was, the Persian Empire was actually going to be led by a mule. He goes into combat. She said, and a great empire is going to fall. He thinks that it's the Persian Empire, but when in actuality, it was his empire. So divination and oracles and all those type of things,
it's all up for interpretation too.
Yeah.
And it has to do your consciousness. If you think about it, everybody reacts based off of information given at that time in their current consciousness. And that's why with time you see things in a different light, and even in a mature mind view, and you see things from different point of angles. But it can be tricky. But yeah, divination has been used for so many centuries by so many ancient cultures. It's not even funny, which is makes it even more fascinating too. Because I'll get the question all the time, like, how are psychics real? Like, there's no proof. And it's like, there is. The CIA has used psychics since before the Cold War, and they definitely used them for the Cold War specifically to try and figure out what the enemy's moves were going to be. And the CIA has documents listed on remote viewing, ESP, extrasensory perception.
You guys ever seen the movie? Oh shit, what's it called? It's got George Clooney in it. The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Oh yeah, that's such a good movie. I like that.
No, but you keep telling me
you gotta watch it. It's based off of a true story. It's fucking bizarre.
Yeah, and when I hear stories like that, so I've studied like security and stuff in school, and like one thing people tend to forget on a grander scale when it comes to things like that is it's all about arms race perspective, right? So like the reason why, like, it's not like, the CIA or some government entity in the US just suddenly decided we should research this. It's because it has defensive and offensive capabilities against another, like a foreign country, but the foreign country also has intelligence collection capabilities, and they likely have detected, or even maybe they were the harbingers of the first movers for that type of behavior. Imagine all the crazy things that go on behind borders of other countries in response to that. And I want to get to this at some point and to discuss with Chris. This is kind of a tangent, but just to bring it up briefly, like AI and genetic manipulation, like there has to be a super soldier, like super intelligent program like that's going on somewhere where there's these human beings who are hybrids of some creature, and like there has to be.
Those AIs, if you ask them the same question too many times, they slip and they say something that they should not be saying. And I've done it myself. Just, I effed around and I found out, okay? And like,
oh no.
Yeah, like,
did they send a drone to your house?
No, it's, I don't have my location on, and it told me my location and where I lived, and I was like, well, my location isn't on, so how do you know that?
I have a really scary theory to share with you. I don't know if you've heard it before, but so you know how like the last 5 or 10 years or so, people have been making like seemingly making a shit ton of money online, like doing all kinds of stuff, right? Like anything from social media, like any kind of content creation you could possibly imagine, right? Like it has never happened in human history. There are people becoming millionaires doing that stuff, and people know that people are becoming rich doing it, so more people are doing it, right? But what are you inevitably doing? You're putting your face, your voice, your actions, your mannerisms all online day in and day out. And I have this like weird theory where like it's kind of marrying up or matching up with the release of AI, or when AI is becoming more prevalent. So like, what if artificial intelligence is being employed now to soak up all of that? I don't know why they would want to do this. I mean, there's a million and one reasons you could think of to why, but what if artificial intelligence is just ingesting all of this, and it's all completely scheduled, and it's kind of like predetermined by somebody or something to get all of this information from humanity online through content creation, all that stuff, just so AI can learn and replicate or do something. Like it just seems like too perfect of a time, especially with supercomputers.
And you know what I tell people? This is where, and I'm not like crazy conspiracy theory or anything like that, but like I don't put blinders on, and I may sound crazy, but I don't think I'm gonna sound crazy to y'all. But like, you know what, the shit that they put in movies, and then they're like, oh, it's just a movie. It's just a movie. That's exactly the point. Whether it's military movies, whether it's alien movies, whether it's paranormal movies, they don't want you to think this shit is real because they want to pull the wool over your eyes, and they put it right in front of our frickin' faces every day.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting idea. I never thought of that, where because I've heard the other side. I've heard like the prediction that comes out in these movies is scary because sometimes it comes to fruition. But what you're saying is they're trying to normalize that these things are, they're just fabricated. They're all smoke and mirrors movies or whatever. So don't pay attention to it. That's Chris, you and I actually kind of talked about that with like aliens, like, UFOs coming into the media over 100%. The last 20 years.
They know exactly.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah. They know what's going on.
I was just going to say real quick, you guys are, I'm sure you're much younger than us, but you probably still remember like the X-Files, right? So when I grew up in the 90s, like everybody, I still remember very vividly that everybody was obsessed with like the X-Files and like spooky stuff and aliens and all that, and looking up to the skies. It was way more mysterious than it is today. But you have this trickle, right, of information to now where it's like kind of like, oh, there's another UFO in the sky and no one's paying attention.
Yeah.
It's like, who cares?
Literally,
Anyway,
my brother and I and my dad actually, my mom was too freaked out. We all used to watch the X-Files and stuff when I was young. We'd stay up late and everything to watch it. And I'm pretty sure that's really the first thing that like I was seeing with UFOs and stuff. But I remember the one episode where like somebody seriously got abducted, remembered some things, remembered weird codes that like they shouldn't know, and there are absolutely human codes and things. I actually know certain codes that can completely get you to not feel pain, completely get manifest help certain things. And it's like,
can you tell me some so I could use them while I'm running?
Yeah, I don't want to. Screw you, opioids. I'll just use that.
I'll just use the code. Shit.
But like the technology is just so far advanced and everything. Not everyone could handle that information. So it's almost as if, yes, they create order, but at the same time, then they're hiding things and putting people in danger. There's a weird messed up balance to it, but at the same time not.
Yeah, that's like when the stuff with, what the hell they call them, Dean? UAPs now?
Yeah, UAP.
Yeah, came out with all those top Air Force guys. Like, literally nobody gave a shit.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. It's like, we fucking know. Like, like we're not shocked, but can we see them already? Type of thing, where it's like a slow drip. Oh, man. The thought of like a predator type alien being out there is just freaking terrifying. I hope that's just fake.
Well, there's belief that there's so many different types of, but then there's good and bad to everything, right? But like then again, they're so far advanced with technology, with so many other things, that I feel like if they were going to be a serious threat, we could have been squashed by now. Like,
it could also be the fact that they're so advanced and we're not, that they don't even care about us. You know?
That's true too. Like, what are we to them, ants? Like, they don't give a shit. Yeah.
So, does the same thing pertain to past lives, and why when people try to talk about the concept, they're like, no, you're nuts. Like, it's not a real type of thing. Does that fall into the same vein where it's like, hey, we kind of know this is a real thing? Because Dean and I, we did an episode where one of the famous cases is this kid like knew everything to a T about World War II, and he was a pilot, and he wasn't coached or anything. They like took him and they randomly put a book in front of him and was like, who are all these people? And he's like, oh, these are my squad mates. And he named everyone, like first, last, and middle name type of thing.
And there are so many cases like that where kids just start talking and know things and remember doing things. And I remember telling my parents when I was little, I was like, I remember doing this before certain things. I don't even remember what it was, but they're like, oh my god, you'll see those TikTok videos of like, you know, the mom's driving in the car and the kid is sitting in the back, and yeah, they just start rattling off. I think it's very out there, and I think though also that people don't want to believe that it's real because it can be fearful, or that their consciousness isn't there, and then they're like, oh, you're crock full of shit, blah 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 blah.
So what would you say to somebody who, like, I'll kind of throw up like an open question. So there's two versions of people, right? You brought up. So there's someone who is completely skeptical, but then there might be people who are open-minded, like yourself. You say, you know, you don't put blinders on, and maybe they're just open to going and getting a reading or whatever. I'm sorry if I missed this earlier. You can add this in, but like, have you ever done like a past lives reading? And if so, how did it go? Or if not, like, what would you need to do? Like, what would you say to someone who was interested in getting a past lives reading?
So I've definitely done them on a few people. Quite a few. It's one of the services I do offer. I've done one on him before, and that's actually why, because I was like really interested why he was super into certain wars and things like that, and what makes him him really. And there was a lot of stuff that came up that really made sense. But I would say, like, going into it, try to have an open mind, because, and here's the thing, if you go into a reading saying like, I need to hear this one thing, or I need this or this, or I'm not gonna, or it's not real, you're going to
Doesn't
black
work.
out anything.
Yeah. It
You're
doesn't work that way.
blocking immediately. So going into it with an open mind.
And this is kind of like going off on a tangent, but it's kind of similar because like you're talking about getting readings, but I don't know if you guys remember, but I live in Hawaii. And I remember when I was first coming out here like 5 years ago, which is crazy to me. I can't believe I've been here for half a decade, but I had come across some information about some famous clairvoyant who is from Hawaii. And I can't for the life of me remember her name, but she's a very real person who is very popular. Like if you want to go see her, you have to pay, like, it's not an exorbitant amount of money. It's like not a huge amount of money, but it's basically like you have to wait a long time. Like there's a huge wait list. So there's apparently something to this clairvoyant. Like she's extremely accurate, but I'm sure she's just one of many, many clairvoyants who are true and factual and actually trying to do it amongst a myriad of other people who are, kind of pulling the wool over other people's eyes, but essentially, like, there are some people in this world who are really accurate, and
Yes.
she is apparently one of them. So I guess a good thing to flip towards for the conversation that I wanted to ask you is, are you aware of anybody else who is like very famous that you maybe idolize or you would love to meet, or someone who's just really risen to that level that you're trying to aspire to as a clairvoyant?
Yeah, definitely. Truthfully, one of them is, I don't know if you guys know who Nick Groff is, but his wife, Tessa Groff, is an incredible psychic medium from what I've seen. Teresa Caputo, I really do like her. Tyler Henry, I think he's my age even, Tyler Henry. And I don't do my readings all exactly like that. You know, every psychic medium is going to be very, very different, but I do want to be able to help people. I did my first gallery event this past February. And I didn't expect to sell out, and I did. It wasn't that many people, but
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. Wow,
Thank
that's
you.
really good.
I love doing it just to help people. So I really hope, I think everyone, there's always going to be people saying like, oh, they're doing this for views. They're doing you post a status on Facebook, you're looking for it to get likes, like everything, like, you know what I mean? I don't think there's a bad thing. I do want to get known for what I do, but not for a bad reason. I do want to be able to help people because I think it's very healing to me.
I actually, I mean, like, to be honest with you, ever since I met you guys, like, I get that sense from you. Like, you are completely genuine in what you believe. And like, the crazy thing too is like, you're smart enough to realize that not everything you know might be factual. Cause like you said, you don't put on blinders, but you're not openly like tinfoil hat on everything. Right. So
Yeah.
the fact that you said that is an indication to me that you're completely sincere in trying to do this and do it right and help people. Spot on. Love it.
Yeah, I think, you go through certain things, and I think that's how I found my calling. I went through a lot through my childhood with my abilities and growing up in such a haunted environment. And you get to a point where you see it all coming together and you're like, oh, I get why I went through all of that, because I'm really meant to help other people with that, and it heals me from my past traumas, and I'm doing something good. It feels good, and it doesn't feel like you're working every day. Like, I'm not making the most money. I won't lie, but I can pay a bill or two. I can pay what I can pay. And we're doing okay.
Yeah.
We're really doing okay for ourselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you're happy, like, and whenever you're gonna hit it bigger, you'll hit it bigger. Like, that's just no doubt about it, because you're gonna keep at it. And you're young, so you got plenty of time to lean into it. So yeah. Right. I love it.
I appreciate that you think I'm young. I appreciate that, because I really don't feel it anymore, but hey.
And I don't want to make light of it a little bit. Like, I kind of like, I'm scared to go to a clairvoyant only for one reason. And that's because I kind of imagine going before someone like that and sitting down and then just like give me a reading, and she looks at me and then she just like, or he or she just like screams and runs away. You know what I mean? Like the worst possible life just like sits in front of me like, oh shit, I need to get away from this person because like there's something wrong. But not like wrong with me, but like, you know, like unlucky, or like, you know, there's something that's going to like pour over onto me. Have you ever heard of something like that happening where someone sits down in front of somebody for a reading and it's just like, holy shit, like something is off, or like something is really heavy? Can you talk about that a little bit? If you can.
So my best friend has tried to go to other medium. I always tell people go to other mediums, because when you can compare and contrast readings, you will get different details and it'll connect a big puzzle. I find it really interesting. So she's gone to other mediums, and the one time she sat down and she's like, okay, let me hold your hands. And my friend's like, okay. You know, she's all like bubbly and like light. She's not like me. I probably would have yanked my hands away and gotten up and walked away, to be honest with you. Like, all that is not needed. But she gave her hands. And this girl like yanked back and starts like rolling her eyes in the back of her head. My friend started crying. She's like, oh my God, I'm sorry.
She's like, what have you done?
I'm like, girlfriend, why didn't you leave? Like, that was not right. And she scared the crap out of her.
So
what do you think happened?
Oh, you mock me like, oh my God, no, it's so not like that. Oh my Lord. I had a spirit mock me during a group reading do that. A spirit that didn't believe in mediums while they were physically here. They're like, oh man, I'm getting something. I'm like, your dead guy is mocking me.
Wait.
I'm seeing a middle finger.
Right? Literally. I was like shocked. And they were like, yeah, he didn't believe in this stuff. And I'm like, clearly.
A spirit mocked you.
Yeah, not in a negative way, though. I think he was an older gentleman, so I think he, like, meant it in an endearing way, like, to pick on me, but yeah.
I would have been like, bro, you know, like, you're in the spirit realm, right? And I can see you. like, what are we doing here, man?
Right. But no, don't. If you're ever afraid to go to a medium or clairvoyant, if you ever want to come to me one of these times when you're ready, I can give you a discount. I've been told I make people very comfortable because I really I try to be myself. I'm not here to freak you out. I'm just gonna talk the way I talk.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I
just oh my God, it really hurts.
Can you do readings virtually, or does it have to be in person? Okay, sweet.
Yep, I have clients in Hawaii, actually.
No way. How did you meet? How did you meet someone like? Do you just advertise or do that? Do you have clients who knew you beforehand and moved out here, or did they find you online, or?
Both, actually. So wow. I knew someone previously that has family down there, but also I've had people that actually found me through TikTok or found me through like a Facebook group where I used to go live for free and do card pulls, and then they ended up messaging me to book. And yeah, they were from completely different parts of Hawaii, but yeah. So
that's cool.
I have clients from like all over, and depending,
from like Sweden or something like that.
I think I've had one from Sweden before, from Alaska, from Texas, from Mexico.
Wow, that's exciting. That's kind of like Chris and I, like our podcast, like sometimes we get hits from people from like Finland, or like, it's like how did you find like, this is awesome. I love you guys for listening, but like, how do you know us?
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, that's why I was telling Chris, I was like, make a Facebook just in case, because there's a lot of paranormal people on Facebook, but then like TikTok is where you get like a range of people, and Instagram, and like, you know, just the more the merrier, and you know, it ends up working out in your benefit later.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, if you ever wanted to do a podcast where I did a reading for you or something, if you were open to that, I can promise you I don't pick up on negative stuff for people.
Oh, I don't care if it's negative or positive.
Be all negative, dude.
Yeah, it will be. Trust me. It's going to be fucking negative. Trust me. All the shit that's been flying my way.
They're gonna block us on every platform. Like,
yeah.
So Alex, you mentioned that you had recently like sold out your first of many events, right? That you did.
It was my very first gallery event, actually. But yeah, I sold out. I was really shocked.
So my question is I know like you do TikTok lives, I join your lives sometimes. And do you ever encounter, or even in that event, any skeptical people in your audience or skeptical clients? Did you have
Oh, yeah.
any skeptics at that event?
Yes, I did. I had one skeptical person at the event. I don't even know if she was skeptical or just bitter, and
Just difficult.
just difficult. Because she kept saying no, 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 and I just continued, and I just kept saying what I said, and she got teary-eyed, so I know something resonated, but she got teary-eyed. Another time, this woman goes, I want to bring my boyfriend to you. I've been with him for 10 years. He doesn't believe in, he doesn't believe in, she's like, I don't want to tell you what his job is or whatever. He does not believe in this stuff, blah, blah, blah. He came in, I pinned down his job and a lot of his loved ones on the other side, and he actually shed a tear. I think he was either a cop or an FBI, in the FBI or something. So he was really like, it's very hit or miss if cops or FBI or any authority like that really believe in psychics. It's very slim pickings with that. So, and there are some that just don't believe in that, and that's okay. But I've definitely, I think, again, that has to do with either the fear of, oh man, there's really more than what I'm able to see, or it has to do with they're just not ready. It's against their belief systems. They just fully don't believe in that. It could be one or the other, but I've cracked a lot of skeptics in my day. I think I'm not going to say you were a skeptic, but I think when we first met you were a little skeptical, would you say, of psychic mediums?
I think I was just open. Never experienced one. I was open to it.
You told the
think I
one
was too
person
fear.
that you thought I was crazy at first
Yeah,
until
I
I.
don't think that means skeptical.
Well, yeah.
My grandma, you've cracked her, I think, a little bit. Or you shocked her. But my grandma's
Yeah,
old,
yeah.
B word. No, I love my grandma.
No, she, your grandma's like, nope, I don't believe in them. I don't believe. And I've said some things, and she's like, what the? Like,
even with the ghosts in general, but she's too old to. If we change her point of view, she'd fucking be deceased.
she literally said, if I were to see what you guys have seen, I'd have to change my belief system, and it would be too much for me.
That's a fascinating concept, and Chris and I have touched on that many times where, we talk about the idea of organized religion and like, what would you do if you got to the other side? Here's the crazy thing about anybody who is staunchly rooted in their religion. It could be any religion, doesn't matter, Christianity, Judaism, whatever, Islam, Hinduism. Like if you got to the other side and you were wholly the same person you are now, and you were presented with a completely different or opposite perspective that you believed in life, would you still believe it? Like, no, right? Because like, that's not how religion works. Like, you have to believe fully and 100% in your faith. So if you were a Muslim or Christian or whatever, and you got to the other side and you met like Krishna from Hinduism, and like, it's like, oh, this is the true ultimate reality, you wouldn't believe it, because like, you would say, no, this is a trick sort of thing.
I mean, you would kind of have to. It's like, oh shit, well, I'm dead.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude,
if you experience anything after you're dead, like, you have to question.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a lot. Yeah, there's a lot that happens when you pass and everything, and the amount of spirits that do have those eye awakening. I've had so many readings and spirits come through, and they'll give me specific symbols where they're like, this is against what I believed in.
I think we found our next podcast theme.
Yeah, man. Fascinating. Saw 3.
The afterlife.
And I know you were asking about something profound, right, Dean?
Yeah.
We've noticed with the spiritual medium. I don't know. I know I've shocked you a few times. I'm not gonna lie to you. You know how like so weird as it is, but being around somebody that's passing away, or even like being around people that have a loved one that passed away in the work that I do, people are like, I'll deliver a message and they're like, that's not something my dad would say. That's not that. Some people don't necessarily turn over a new leaf on their deathbed, but it's like what you said. Once you pass away and you're in a different dimension, you no longer have a physical body, but you have a soul. So you can't operate on the third dimension because you don't have a 3D body to operate on that third dimension anymore, but you're going to see all these different perspectives that you were not able to before, and you can turn over a new leaf. And I have found that a lot of loved ones will turn over that new leaf and finally open their eyes once they're there. Not
Fascinating.
always, but
Yeah. And one last question I had in this vein, and this is just out of pure curiosity. It's totally up to your perspective. There's no, it's just an objective question. But can a medium who is trying to be legitimate like yourself and trying really hard to grow and become more effective, are there ever any times where you feel like, oh, I'm wrong right now? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like when you're taking a test, right? You studied really hard for it and you're really confident at it, but there might be a couple questions that you miss. So like that, I'm really interested in that aspect of like a medium's life, right? Because if you're being true to yourself, like no one's going to be perfect all the time. So like what happens in that moment when you're not hitting the mark? Do you feel that? Or do you just kind of have to trust all the time that you're 100% right to get it right?
So it's a little bit of both. You have to learn to trust that you're right, and if it doesn't make sense, it might later. Or I do tell people sometimes it's nothing. I could be getting something, pulling something from somebody.
Oh yeah, that
literally
makes
in the
sense.
vicinity. There are times where I'm sitting there and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. This is really embarrassing. This is awkward. I was like, what did I lose my ability? The one time we did a reading on this you were recording it for the Greystone Manor we went to. Remember?
Yes.
I did a remote reading. I told him, don't tell me any of the info from this place. I don't want to know. I picked up a full, page and a half of information on this manor, and he says none of this makes sense to the history. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? Well, once we got there, we talked to the owner. She confirmed every single thing I wrote down, and some of it wasn't put online because some of it couldn't be fully confirmed.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes,
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but when you said that, I kind of got this idea that it's almost like you are like a radio tuner, or like you're someone who's trying to manipulate the dial, right? And you have a good idea of what you want to listen to, but like sometimes it could be like you're a little bit too far to the left or the right, and you might be picking up some static or something like that. So yeah, I get it. Yeah.
That's exactly how it is. Or like by the time we got to that manor, she was telling us, "Oh, I felt connected to the house and found out I was related to the ghosts that used to live here." And I kept getting emotional and I was like, "Shane, I feel like I could be related to the ghosts that are here." And he's like, "Alex, you're off your fucking rocker." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, I'm probably off on something. There's no way. I'm probably off on the mark." Weeks later, DNA results came back on my DNA. I was related to that woman and to the spirits that were in that manor.
That's
so
for that to come about is significant. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like I always tell myself, I'm like, I hope I don't come off unprofessional, because sometimes I'm like, holy fuck, I cannot believe I even picked that up. Like,
yeah,
because
you
sometimes
shock yourself sometimes.
Yeah, that's how you know you're genuine.
Yeah.
That's really how you know you're genuine.
I appreciate that, because my mom before, she's like, you can't do that, Alex. You're the medium. And I'm like, I didn't expect that from me. I don't know. So like I have to now force myself to just say what I've got to say, even if it doesn't resonate at the time being. I'll write it down for them.
Also, sometimes your clients don't give you enough feedback, so you feel like you second guess yourself on stuff you say.
Yeah, there are certain clients that like I don't like to say anything at all, and I'm like, okay, you don't have to. But when you validate as I go, after I say something, the spirit then is like, okay, they know who I am, they get what I'm saying, I can move on to the next topic.
Yeah, but it also helps you like hone in, right? Like you're getting closer to that needle centering on the waiver.
Basically, because then if they don't want to acknowledge or anything, that spirit doesn't even want to move forward with information because they're like, oh, I don't know if my message is getting through to
Not
my loved
accepting
one.
it.
They're not accepting
Sure.
what I'm trying to tell them. I don't know. Those clients come back. There was one that was texting me tonight to book, and she never says anything during her readings. She actually swore up and down that I was not accurate at all, and she is now a regular that's come back to me 3 or 4 times now in the past year or two.
I was gonna say real quick, like when we were talking about people who would come to your page or whatever, or like when you're doing a live reading or something and try to engage with you, but they're skeptical. It's like, God, like what, like how does that even happen? Like if you're not even interested in this at all, like why would you even come?
That's what I tell them. I'm like, this doesn't have to be for you. I'm not forcing your hand here. Every once in a blue moon, I'll give in and I'll say something to really freak them out, and then they're like, okay, I'm a new follower. And I'm like, okay.
Nice.
But I think that's like intuitively I know maybe, or something in the back of me knows that I can do that with that because most of the time I'm like, you know what? If you're here to just bash me, be bitter, not better. I'm gonna mute you. Come back another day if you feel different. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex,
So,
I have one more question
Yeah.
for you before I pass it to Dean. If he has another question. So, are there any circumstances where you would flat out deny a reading to someone? Like,
Good question. Yeah.
like they'll come to book with you, and then it's like you ever seen Scary Movie 2? When they're like making fun of the Exorcist movie, and then they like
my
bring the
God, yeah.
father into the room, and he's like, "Fuck this," and he like tries to leave. Like, what would cause you to like have that type of moment? Not exactly that type of moment, but like,
I have had clients get really nasty with me because they didn't respect my time and energy. They didn't want to pay me then and there. They didn't if people are rude to me to an extent where I'm like, that's not acceptable, I will, and they'll be like, well, I want to pay you. I straight up will say, well, I'm the owner of my business and I can decide if I want your money or not. So respect
Yeah.
is, respect is earned, not given. Like, I'm nice to people right off the bat, so and I don't mind a skeptical, but there are times where people are flat out nasty, saying things they shouldn't be saying, or just are and I'll give warnings. There are people that have been disrespectful of my time and energy and didn't want to wait for their scheduled session. And I ended up giving them their reading and then letting them know that was the last time I could help them. And I'm like, I can recommend you to other, some of my students or my mentors. I can recommend you to somebody else.
right. Have there ever been instances where like someone came to you for a reading and you denied them because it just felt like spiritually off? Like,
Yeah, I have. Yeah, because if I feel like that person's gonna be a hassle or something's really wrong with it.
As an older person, like managerial level, but like the best advice I can give you is to like you should remove yourself from the riffraff, the bullshit, by getting a team of psychics, and you're the manager. And when you're the manager, you can control the flow and like the bullshit and stuff. And
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a lot easier now. I've gotten a handle on it now where like I put in a policy and you have to pay me by a certain time because obviously if you don't, then I know you're not going through with it and that's fine. I can book the next person type of thing. So
yeah,
it took me a while, but there's definitely times where like I've denied somebody a reading because of their energy if they were negative or I felt like they weren't ready. Or there's been people that come to me and they're like, somebody just passed away yesterday. I say, give yourself time to grieve. And then also, occasionally, spirits can't always like figure out how to communicate to people after you don't have a physical, like, you have a voice box right now to talk. Once you pass away, again, you don't have that physical shell to be on that third dimension. So you have to figure out a new way to communicate all over again.
right.
And
Makes
that can
sense.
take time.
The last question, it is something that I'm personally interested in hearing from you. So what has been overall, if you had to pick one, the most profound spiritual lesson or experience you've had as a psychic medium or a past lives reader? And what would you say, again, we've said this kind of already, but like, what would you say to somebody who would want to come to try that out, like tying that into your spiritual lesson or experience?
I would say that it is an eye-opening, healing experience. People leave a lot lighter and with a different mindset. Mentally, just be open if you come to get a reading. I just remember because I didn't go through for the history walk, and I got a lot of stuff. Oh, I remember oh my gosh. So Shane went into the whole house during the history walk. I stayed outside to do like the reading on the place, and I stayed in the car. I did not want to hear them, even though they were in a house all the way. I felt it was the craziest thing. I was writing stuff down, and all of a sudden I'm like, I feel like I'm being burned alive. And I was like, my face is burning. I was like, do I got a scratch on me? And my friend's like, no, your face is fine. I had to get out of the car. And I don't get physical sensations very often, but I physically felt my face burning. And I was like, somebody was like burned alive. Like caught in a fire, burned alive.
And then doing the walkthrough, they don't know for sure, but they think that in one of the rooms someone caught fire. That's right.
And that was very creepy. Like, I've never had something feel like my skin was burning, and I was like, oh my god. Like, I feel like something's wrong with me. I'm glad there was nothing there. I literally thought I had a scratch, or like there, like I scratched myself with my nail, or I was like, I feel burning.
Man, that's intense. But no, that's great though. Like, that's great advice, and also a really compelling story to end. Chris, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
No, I do not. But what I will say is we probably will have you guys back on again, because this was a fun conversation.
Well, I hope you will have us. We will have you on. We will have you on.
If you had fun, we will have. We are willing to have you back on again to discuss. We briefly touched on, the afterlife and kind of like what happens with spirits and stuff like that. So that would be an interesting conversation to have with Alex from your perspective. But for our listeners, why don't you share where they can find you?
You guys can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at SAW Paranormal. I think we have a TikTok.
It's SAW Paranormal on everything.
Mm-hmm. Or my psychic readings are on Alex Marie Gasca as well, and you can find my name on anything as well.
Nice.
And you can find me on OnlyFans.
No.
With your dirty feet pics. No, I'm just kidding.
No. My God.
All right. Shane, Alex, thank you so much again.
It's been a blast.
Part of the show. It's been a blast. It's been a great conversation. We can't wait to have you back on. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed listening to them once again. If you're listening to this on a Friday when it releases, I hope you have a good weekend. And whatever day you're listening this on, I hope you have a good week and a good day.
Later, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode of The Wandering Road. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a rating on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please share the show with your friends, as that would help us grow immensely. Also, be sure to follow us on social media. You can find us on TikTok at twroadpodcast, our Instagram at twroadpodcast, and our Facebook by searching for The Wandering Road Podcast. If you'd like to get a hold of us, you can reach us at our email address, twroadpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We would love to have you on the show as a guest so you can share your stories, or you could submit email submissions of your stories that we could dedicate an episode to. Thanks, and we'll catch you on the next one.